Hello and welcome to Wikipedia Weekly Network, here where Albin Larsson and I, Jan Ainali, are editing Wikidata Live. How are you doing, Albin?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Jan?
I'm doing well as well. I've been on the Code the City 24 today and been working on Scottish courts, actually, in Wikidata. So I
Nice.
think they are complete now.
That's amazing. It's
Yes.
always nice to get those completeness checkboxes when you're
Yes,
working on
indeed.
the Go directory.
Yeah.
Right. But what have you planned for tonight?
Tonight, I sort of almost want to continue what I did last, combining queries on Wikidata with queries in the general API. So that's what I'm planning to do. And
Right.
today I'm going to take a look at page views because there are no examples on that.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's not super obvious that that is something you have access to in the query service as well.
exactly. So, yeah. And what are you having planned?
I'm going back to a bit of glaciers, at least as a first example,
Yeah,
because a couple of months back I worked on glaciers and maintenance queries. And what I did then also was to set up a bit of a service which runs each week, the
yeah.
maintenance queries, and visualizes how they differ over time. So I'm gonna show that now when I got data for 6 months, and I
Yeah.
also gonna show how to set this up for orchard
Ooh,
queries. So
nice.
that's my plan.
Very nice. And I think before I start, because I forgot last time to give some credit, because I got a lot of help with when I researched my query last time from Lucas Werkmeister. And in my eagerness to show the query last time, I forgot to uh, actually credit Lucas. And this time, I'm going to give credit before I start, because I thought, as you said, it's not obvious that you can do this. And someone asked in a Facebook group, in the Wikipedia Weekly Facebook group, and I said, I don't think you can do this. And then Wojtek Dostal showed the query, and I'm going to show his original query in the end, and because that's a little bit advanced, so people can first. I'm going to show sort of the basics, and then we'll show the advanced stuff as well.
Yeah, and
And if you,
here's a tip for everyone, because Jan often asks these questions in the Wikidata Telegram chat, and that's just a great space to be to ask such questions and to see the conversations. Because I also tend to learn when watcher people ask things, and also you get spoilers for what we are doing.
yes, you do. You do. And of course, in this query, please do ask questions if I'm too quick, or if you have like other interesting things you would like to see, because with page views, it's always hard to pick a topic. So I have something prepared, but we'll see where we go. So let's start a little bit like we did last time by, and that time we went to commons, to the API Sandbox. Today we're going to use English Wikipedia to start with, but all the Wikipedias and commons more or less work the same. So, and I didn't show you how to get there last time, but the way I usually do this, because I can never remember the exact name of the page, is I'll go to the special pages, which you find on the left, and then I'll scroll down to the data and tools section, which has the API Sandbox. And it will load. And just like the last time, for this specific purpose, it might be a little bit easier to actually read the XML. So I'll change the format. The first thing I'll do to the XML, because that's the paths we use later on to get the values. And then, as most often as well, we'll have to have some sort of action. And today, we're going to use the page. No, it's the query. It's still the query. It's almost always the query.
Indeed, almost always.
Yes, but in the query, when for the prop pair, here is where we go for the page views. This one, which will give us a few things. And we can actually specify it here. And here's an interesting thing. There's something called PVIP days, which is the number of days it's gonna get. So I'll just go for 10 for now, so we see everything in one screen. But as it says, you can go to 1 to 60. And then this time, heading back up here, we need to use a generator to get something. And this time, instead of last time we used all pages and specified just one value, we're going to specify just one value this time too, but we're going to specify a category, which will give us a bunch of things. So we'll scroll down to the generator down here, and it says something. And you might think that you want to use the categories, which is sort of a false friend for us here, because what we actually want is the category members. We got the things in a category.
Yeah, we need to count for each page.
Yeah. And then, of course, after selecting that, we'll get a new thing up here, the generator category members. And as you can see here, it tells us nicely that it must include the category prefix. So I'll add something here. I'm not sure if this auto-completes. So I'll just go with the category environmentalists just to have something. And if you have any other ideas, we can try that. And I think that this is enough for us to actually make a request. Hopefully get something here. Yes. Oh, we see something here in the top, heroes of the environment. So we could probably, do we only get 10 first here? Yes.
It's a subcategory, right?
Yes, that's right. So we only get 3, 4 results, 5 results. Yes, and we see some here as well. I don't think these had any page views at all during this time, so it's not giving us this with the dates. Actually, yeah. I'm going to do a little simpler here. I'm going to go back to the page view and select just one, so we see a little bit better what happens, because that was a little bit tricky to read. It's not that easy to read this either. It's wide screen. But we see here is a one page in that category, and on this date it has this many views, and that's sort of what we get. So now we sort of know what kind of query we want to make. Let's head back to in the API. Let's head back to Wikidata query service and just make a simple query. So I'm going to start simply with just doing something here. And we have shown this before with the values, which is sort of a easy way to specify some specific things. So here I'm just going to tell, like, for the values, I want category environmentalists. So now the item has that value. Then there are a number of different, if I just run this now, we'll see that I get the item and the item label. And this will work if I run it on English, but if I would run it on Swedish, it wouldn't work because it's not named like this there. So I'm going to create this query so that you can get the right thing here if you want to change the language version that you're working against.
Yeah,
so,
because category is not named category in Swedish. It's very similar. It happens to
yeah,
be, but it's not the
environmentalists
same.
is not very similar.
Indeed.
Yeah. So I'm going to want to get something with a site link here. And then we have schema, and you can do control space here to see what you can select from. And the thing that we want is the schema about, because we want a site link about this item. So this is the first step to find that. And then we want to, for now, only query for the English version. So let's go with the schema and see what we have to choose from. And here we can do a handy part or a handy trick that schema is part of. And then you have to supply the wiki. And it's a little bit tricky, syntax here. So you have to actually write the URL for English Wikipedia like this, I think. No, you have to spell it correctly. It's probably not like, let me double check that.
No, I think it's a slash at the
Yeah,
end.
it is a slash in the end. Like that. And then finally, we saw also that there in the schema there is something called name, which will be the name for that article or page on that wiki. And we'll just call that name.
Right.
And let's select that up here and run this to see what we get. And not very surprising, like this is the same category environmentalist, because I had English here. I'm just going to switch this to Swedish so you can see the difference. And it's something totally different, kategori miljöaktivister. So that's where you can do some work and change. So now we know a way how we can get the category name that we used in the generator over here. This is the value that we wanted, that we now has as a name. So this is the thing that we're going to feed into the API. So let's do a new service here. Nicely as well. So we can see what's happening. And as we last time, now we're calling Wikibase API. Oh, no, the MW API. And we're gonna wrap it in here. And this is gonna have a lot of sort of setup to it. And then the thing we're gonna feed it is the name. So we should have this like an autocomplete, or a simple example, perhaps. Well, these are going to be examples,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit tedious to write this all the time.
Indeed.
So the thing we need first is service param.
Does it autocomplete if you press Control space?
Well, it doesn't complete to this specific one, but it is used in several other ones.
Right.
So you can actually see it here at least, how that is going to need a capital P.
Right.
Whoop. And then here it is, the Wikibase API. And we need a generator. And we're going to need to specify the endpoint again. And and here's also the tricky thing, because let me go back here. Let's choose English Wikipedia again. But as you saw, this was how we specified English Wikipedia over here. Well, here we specify it like this. And this is not obvious, like when you're doing what.
No.
So it's a lot of tricky things.
String in one place and URI in the other place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to borrow the trick that you told me last time. So I'm heading back over here, and after I make the request, I get this. Oh, no, we don't see it because I'm so zoomed in. But we get the entire string here, and that has a lot of good things in it. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put it below here just to see a few things what I'm going to need. And the first thing I'm going to need is the category members. Because over here...
Hello, Sandra. We are sending good vibes in all directions as well.
Good. Because that's the MW API, the generator value. So generator...
Yeah.
I'm going to get the category
These
members.
parameters essentially maps directly towards the URL below.
Yeah. And in the same way, we're going to need we see it over here. So I can copy this and just first the prefix MW API prop, and then it's not equals, but this. And we also need to tell the what category. So that's going to be the MW API, and what was the name of it? GCM title. And there's always going to be a G on the generators. I think that's... And here's the trick then. This is what we're going to use here. So you can query for something else later. You can totally change up here to something else without needing to go in and wrestle in this part.
Right. Orchard and the endpoint.
Yeah. And then I think we need to take this one, the number of days here. And I'm going to show you something surprising with this later on. But for now, we just say 1. And now we didn't specify in here. I'll show you back over here in the query again. Where is it? I think it's in the generator here. The default limit is 10. So if you have a larger category, this will just show you 10 unless you do something else. So let's just crank this up to 5,000 for now. No, we're not going to have 5,000. We just saw we had 4 in it. But to show you the parameter, because that's the one you're going to need to specify if you are unlucky or having a good day.
Does 5,000 work? I don't think so.
I haven't tried.
Because there is a limit of 500 for bots, I believe, and 50 for normal users.
I think that's different on different calls, but right. I'm not sure. Either way, we can
Let's see.
specify it. In this case, it's safe because it's a small category. So, but this is the number, and if you don't set anything, it's going to be 10. So you might be surprised. So let's say 500 here, then, because that's possibly the limit. And that is all that we need to feed in. Then we also want something to back out. And as we saw last time, that's when we had the help of these. So let's bring out let me think. We are feeding in a category. We're going to get a lot of pages. So we want, as we see here, we want a title. So we know which page we get a page view from. So I'm just going to call that title, a new thing here. And that one is fairly obvious Wikibase colon. And here it's always tricky because it's API with large O output. And then it's just MWAPI colon title. That's something that exists there. But then, of course, the most important thing that we want is the page views. So we're going to call that the page views. And that's going to be the same Wikibase API output. And then there's going to be the tricky part with the path, which was page views.
And as you said last time, this is why you want to have the format here in XML.
Yeah.
Because order-wise, the path will be very different from the data you retrieve.
So
and
here we have
me, that's easy to scratch your head over.
Yes. So here it's the page views, and PVIP is the next. So page views slash PVIP slash. And last time we said it was at value. And for some reason that I haven't really understood yet, this doesn't work here, but instead it's text.
I can explain why that is.
Yes,
it's
please
because if we take a look at the XML.
Yes, let's do. So here is where we are.
We can see that what we're picking here is actually inside of the two tags, the PVIP.
Yeah.
But back in the order query, it wasn't in between the tags. Exactly. So for example, if we would like to retrieve the date here instead, we would type at date.
We will do that.
We will do that even.
Yes.
So that's why it's the difference.
Yes. So this is the text. Then we learn something. So if it's in between here, that's the text we're gonna select. So let's copy this one to a new, but instead of page views, we're gonna call it the date. And here we say, as you said, at date. And now up here, we want to have title. Actually, we're going to remove all of this because we don't want that anymore. And we'll remove that as well. So we want the title, the page views, and the date. And then I'll remove our setup things here. And hopefully this will run. We get 185 results, a lot of blanks, and then we get some with some, yes. And here we see what we got before as well. So this is sort of good, but it's not exactly what we want. So the first thing I want to do now is I want to filter out all of the blanks here. And there are a number of different ways that you can do that. One sort of, I think it's almost like exploit, is to go filter page views, like that. Now I think we'll get rid of all the blanks one. Yes. Now, these are not in order. We would like these in order. Unfortunately, if I just try to do order by, let's say, descending for page views, it's not going to be totally right because this is a string. It's not a number.
Oh.
We selected text over here. That's a hint for us. So we'll have to find this and do this is always tricky to do it to an integer.
You should be able to do this directly in the descending function, right?
I might be able to do that, yes.
Without the entire bind as well.
Yes, you're right. So if I just do XSD integer of this,
yeah,
it might work.
I think so.
Yay! Here we go. Very nice. Now, you saw that when we were in the API sandbox, we could specify the number of days. And so if I change this number to 2, would we get 2 days each here? Well, let's try it. The spoiler alert is we won't, but something else will happen. So I'll run this for 2. And if you spot, everything changed and it stepped back in time 1 day. Oh. So it takes from the list this many steps back. And I think it's just like, actually it takes the first value, but that's how they are ordered in the API.
Okay, so they are ordered backwards.
So yeah. So changing this number won't give you more data, but it will give you other data. And if you just want to do this for yesterday, you'll set it to 1. And if you wanted to do some specific date, you can step back with this API 60 days in time, and you specify it when you want to. So that is sort of what I wanted to show you today. But I also promised you to show you the original query that I got inspired by, and give some extra credit to Wojtek here. So I'll show you this here. This is doing something a little bit different, because I'll explain you quickly what it does. He looks for people who was candidates in one specific election, finds out which party they ran for, looks for the people there on the Czech Wikipedia for the name of them and feed this into here, and then sums the views here for the parties. So we'll see which parties candidates in the election got most page views. That's what it's doing. Now we see here that he's using this 2, which means he gets this for 2 days back. So it's not for 2 days, but for 2 days back. So let's run this now and see, because you can also see here in the top, uses the fancy bubble chart. We haven't shown that very much, but for this type of query, it makes a lot of sense. And it's, of course, a little bit slow because here's, I think we have a couple of hundred candidates in the election.
Right. It's nice that it lets us do this type of requests even.
Yes. And then it looks like, well, only 21 results, yes, but this is the parties. So a whole 21 parties represented in the election that's in Wikidata. And then sorted by the size of the page views. So this is a very interesting kind of query. Mine was a little bit simpler. So I think this is a good start if you just want to start and try, and then you can be inspired by this as well if you want to try to do some addition and sum things up. All right.
Nice. And I'm gonna jump straight into and back to a good old page we might remember from a few months ago, because I collect maintenance queries for glaciers. Queries where I can check things like the least common properties used on glaciers. I remember this, we did an episode where I tried to look for interesting data to edit rather than maybe the most important data. So a lot of surprises from that one, I remember. But then we got more like finding problems, like items with both instance of glacier and mountain. They should usually be 2 different things. So that is something I want to highlight when such a thing appears. And glaciers with a country but no continent. Usually for glaciers is rather important because there are plenty of glaciers which isn't in a country, but on a continent, and that type of thing. Or glacier with English description set to use glacier, things like that. And what I did 6 months back was to set up a bit of a service which run these queries each week so that I can see the difference over time. And that's our goal for today. So I'm going to show what the end result is here for the glaciers queries, and then we will do this for something else. So this is the kind of web page this ends up completely generating without any interference. Since I created this thing 6 months back, it has had no input from me at all. But here I can see that here's the query. The query is here, or like the file which the query results has been put into. So this is, if I click on it, we can see here, for example, I got glacier and mountain, and it just showed me the results of that query. But most important of this is that it lets me select when. So here I can see that this hasn't been running in a while for some reason, but I can see that this ran 6 months ago at least. And I can see the change here, that there hasn't been a change, and that's actually why it hasn't updated. So this was my original one. We got a set of results here, 14. Then a little later the same month, we can see that some was removed, and here we got less. And then it hasn't changed at all since then. And I can select the results of an object query. We can select glacier statement counts. So it is essentially orders the glaciers based on their count. So if I tell this to be selected by quantity, we can see that a large one in on Iceland is the top one. Um, this is the largest one in Europe, in Norway, and we can see their statement counts. And we can see here actually that at the top here where I selected like when the query was made, so we can see that this updates every week because here there are always changes to this one. We can see that there was a couple of bytes in this file which changed, but we can actually go here, or I was just there. But if I scroll down here, we can actually see these changes. We should be able to do so at least, because fields that have changed should be colored. See if I scroll a little more, should I maybe have selected a smaller example? Or something with, let's pick something with a bigger change. Here is a big change. 20 days ago, there was a lot of additions to this file, which is super useful for me as well because it indicates that someone made an import or something like that. But here we can actually see that we got a glacier here, the Fox Glacier in New Zealand. We can see that, oh, that the field there is yellow, meaning that it changed since the last query the week before, and its statement changed. And if I would go to the next one and look up the Fox Glacier, I would be able to see the old number. And if I scroll down here, let's see, we had a lot of changes in this file. Not super easy to show off in this massive file. So let's see what we can find. Yeah, here, for example, we see an entire new record, and it's being highlighted with this green thing here that it was created, the Berlin Glacier in Antarctica. It just got 2 statements, so that's good to know. I imagine it's created from an article that might have been written. And I imagine there is a ton of changes in here, which I can't directly spot as I scroll this on my small screen. But this is incredibly useful, and I got a bunch of those, like less than 2 labels, missing coordinates. So let's pick missing coordinates. We can see that in the last week, we got less glaciers with missing coordinates. That's great. So we can see the trend here. The last 2 weeks has been good. Before that, there was some additions. So if I scroll here, should be able to see a bunch of green rows somewhere. We should. I guess I'm not seeing things because I try to scroll fast and getting old. But this is essentially powered by like a GitHub repository. And it does not require any code, or it only requires code which you can copy paste. And that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna copy paste some code to set up a service for this, like for some monitoring. And we're gonna do it for a Gov directory, because Gov directory has this feature that pages like this for Norway, with list government agencies, are essentially just powered by Spark queries. And this is a great thing to monitor because when a change happens here, we want to look at that change and see, should this change occur? Has there been a change in the number of agencies and that type of thing? So that's what we're going to set up today. We're going to make sure that for Norway, we can get a list like that, maybe each week or something like that, to just ensure that we are able to monitor the changes over time. So because Gov directory is already on GitHub, I'm going to create a new empty repository. Just like this, I can say Wikidata monitoring. And maybe use that for now. I can change it later on. I want to make it public. New secrets here. I'm gonna leave the README and license out. For now, everything should be CC0. I don't think you can copyright protect this either. And I'm just gonna use the web interface for this. Lots of people believe you not need to know Git and things like that. I'm gonna try to skip that. I'm gonna head straight into creating new files. So first I want to create a bit of a helper file. And I'm gonna look at this repository to see what's going on here. So it's called postprocess.js. It essentially says that, hey, this is data from Wikidata. It's in this format, change it. And I'm not gonna explain this at all because I'm not gonna make anything here. I'm just gonna copy paste it. It's 16 lines of code, and that's all I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna commit it, so it's saved. We got a file, and I'm gonna head over to something called actions, because actions is something that allows you to run code on GitHub and not only store your code there. And we're gonna set up a new workflow. And they got a bit of a button for this, and they got a bunch of things going on here. And I'm gonna be lazy again. I'm just gonna head over to this Wikidata quality metrics for glaciers, head over to a GitHub folder here for workflows, copy this called flat, because this entire process is called flat data. And now you're gonna see a couple of things when I show off this. So I'm gonna copy all the code that runs there. I'm gonna replace all of this. It should pretty much use default things anyway. It got a name, doesn't really matter. Here's the path to the files. We actually need to make sure that that is correct. Like this is called main, but here it's expecting flat. So I'm gonna change that out. It does a bunch of setup. I don't really need to change any of that. But then it does a bunch of things. We are essentially saying name here for various things. We got something going on here. It got steps. So this is step 1. It sets up some code with something. It checks out the repository, and it fetches data. And this is the important one for us. And I got a bunch of this for each query, but I don't just want to do one for now. So I'm gonna make sure I got one step with the fetches data. And we can also see that we got a URL here. And this is a SparkQL query. And it's slightly formatted in a different way. It's not to the normal query interface, but it's used to a raw endpoint. And I'm going to show you just in a moment why that is important. So I'm going to remove that. So we got something to work with. It says here in file name it downloads, it says Glacier in the Mountain here. I want to set this to Norway. And this just sets to the computer program here, what should it name a file when it downloads. It has no impact at all on anything actually. There we go. And I think that's correct. Let's hope. I would be surprised if we succeed on the first try, but that's how it is. I'm gonna pick up that Norway query. It's also here on GitHub already. It's in our website repository because it powers the website essentially. In the queries folder, under generators, under Norway. So this is one of the many queries that powers Go directory. And I'm gonna copy paste this just and head over to the query interface because we still need that special URL. So I'm gonna run this, make sure it works. It does a bunch of things. It doesn't really matter what it does as long as it gives us some results. We got 454 results. And here comes the tricky part. So this is to the query interface. If I would share this URL, you would just get this interface, but we want the raw data. And you know, you can like download it here. Oh, under download, we want to go to link instead. And then we got SparkQL endpoint. And this is the link we want because this is just a raw link to some raw data. So if I open this, we aren't even presented with something. It just gives me pop-up if I want to download this raw data. But I want to copy paste the URL here. because that's enough for me actually. So given that, and I hope this is enough for me, haven't done this in 6 months, and I'm just gonna copy paste that URL in there. And I'm gonna say start commit here. And commit essentially is language here for save. And I'm betting, or I'm not completely betting, but let's say I've done everything correct here. And before I do that, we got something called schedule here. And this essentially is cron job, which is a technical way of saying time intervals. And you can actually use an online service to create this for you, where you can just write each week and something like that, and it will generate a string like this for you. This, it even says it if I hover over it, that it says run at midnight UTC every Monday. And that's fine for this, I believe. So I'm going to save this. I'm not going to bother with saying something. And okay, now we got an action here. So I should be able to head over to actions. We can see that it appears that it's already running. It might be running when I save it. And it starts spinning here. So if I click on it, I might get more information. It's scheduled. I actually want to make sure it's not only scheduling. Yeah, we can see here the various processes. It prints a bunch of things. And it says it completed. So that a lot of things happened quickly, but hopefully it just proves that it might have done the correct thing. And we can actually see that it saved a file here, norway.csv. So I want to click on that. It contains the data we wanted. Perfect. Exactly. I'm super happy. I actually didn't expect this to work at the first time. So that's great. Then I want to copy the last part of the URL here. So gov directory / Wikidata monitoring. And I'm just going to head over back to my Glacier here, because I should just be able to replace this part here like that and give it a file name. So norway.csv. And I want to remove that last part, I believe. And if I just type in there, it loads. And because everything essentially changed here, we got a bunch of colors. But now it says there they created a new file, so it got a ton of changes. And it just got this 1 minute ago. But if I would rerun this on Monday, it might have changed, and we would just be able to visualize that as we did with the glaciers. And the very nice thing here, so let's say I got time for it. So let's set up another Gov directory country. Let's see, head over there. Let's set up Denmark as well. So I just want to fetch the correct query from the Gov directory website, but you can use any query. There are no limits as long as it's select or select distinct query, and not something like an ask query or describe query, which we don't see that often anyway in Wikidata land. So I want to have Denmark, I said. So here's the query. I'm gonna copy paste it into the Wikidata query service and ensure that it runs. But most of all, I want it to give me that URL. So it runs. I'm gonna copy the link to the SparkQL endpoint, not to the results. Copy link. And I'm gonna head over back to this workflow file. I'm just gonna edit this. And that's not the right one. It's there I want to go. And head over here, click edit. And I just want to copy paste this last part again, the with part, copy, paste. And I need to ensure that it even tells me that it's in the wrong place. So press space a couple of times. Can I get it? Or is it tabs? It might be tabs. Let's give it tabs then. Oh, it's still a complaint. Let's double check with the Glaciers one if it's. Oh, I need the name as well, of course. So I needed to copy paste a little bit more, which I should have known. I'm just gonna start again. So I'm gonna copy paste all of this actually. Let's see. Back there. Paste. And there I got a new section. I'm not gonna change the name of the fetch or what type of process it uses. I just want to change the URL, and I copy pasted the URL before. So I want to replace this Wikidata URL, which is a long one. And here's a tip. Save your query somewhere else as well as here, because as you see, it's kind of encoded, and it might be really tricky to reproduce the same query later on if you want to change it, because it's not that easy to see what's actually going on in there. And I'm gonna call this Sweden, the
No,
output,
Denmark.
Denmark. This is why we're two people. And I'm gonna save this. And now I'm gonna be good, and I got the time. Call added Sweden.
No, Denmark still.
And still Denmark. We should start doing this earlier. And I'm just gonna save that. And we saw previously that as soon as I saved it, even if it said here to run on the schedule, it will run once when I save it as well. So we can actually see here that it even says what I did, the last change, and you can see it. That something is going on here. And we can see that this is scheduled, which means it's in like a queue. Other people are doing things as well, and we're standing here waiting. And it started running. If I go into it, we can see that. Oh, did it already finish?
I think it said scheduled, but it was running.
Okay. Yeah, it appears because it says here how
Yeah.
long each thing took, and we can see, like, for example, the first fetch of data it did for Norway took 12 seconds, but then it just took 2 seconds and so on. So if we head back to the code here, we can see it added a new file, and we can see someone added it here, a type of bot. And if we go back to this site, I can just reload it. And this is Norway. It didn't add a second one here because Norway didn't change, but we can also head over to Denmark and see what data we have to work with here. And actually it recognized that this is a type of tag here. That's actually why it's colored in this case, because I think we can use this to filter. They're kind of tags. So we can sort by them and such. So we see that here we got a Danish municipality, which is different from municipality in Denmark. That might be something to look at, and things like that. So incredibly useful, especially over time, and it's such easy to set up. It looks technical, but one can use copy paste the technical parts and click buttons.
Especially now when it's we have a video recording, you can just pause, do
Yeah.
it, play watch a little bit more, and then pause and do it.
Indeed, and you can feel free just to copy and paste this example as well from the Gov directory GitHub. If you aren't very well known with GitHub, the easiest way to get to the Gov directory one is actually to go to any page on the Gov directory website and just see here a GitHub link down at Join the Community. And if we click that, we come to this welcome page, and we can scroll down and see here Wikidata monitoring, and we can go to that and copy paste it, or even just make a copy of it as well onto your own account. Feel free to. So it's incredibly useful. Something to be aware of. It's not very nice if you put this to run every hour, because it still uses the Wikidata query service. So that's something I would like to point out, that hey, the Wikidata query service is a shared resource. Let's not run our big queries each hour. I think once a week or even a little more often, especially for easy queries, isn't much of a problem at scale. But if a lot of people start doing this, um, then it might be a bit of work, especially if your queries returns a lot of results. It's not always just about how long time the query takes to run, but a big hurdle is also how much result does the Wikidata query service need to actually send back. So that's one of the bottlenecks of the Wikidata query service that is good to have in mind. It's not only the timeout within a minute. So
Would
I'm
it
gonna
over time perhaps also be good to not everyone selecting Monday at midnight, because that would be sort of a DDoS attack?
yeah. So that date I had Monday at midnight, it just something that I added at some point because I felt like, hey, I probably start working on glaciers on Mondays because that's what I do,
Yeah.
and then it's useful to have it. But it can run any time. You might even have a look at some of the graphs for Wikidata when people query it, and even set the time to sometime when a lot of people do not run queries. That is something I will actually update. If that sounds like a great thing to do, yeah. I'm gonna quickly scroll through the comments in case there are questions.
I think this was a good idea. Jane was saying, stash my queries in a large text file that I search for my own keywords.
Yeah,
It's always tricky to find your previous. Doing it in text file is good. For now, I'm saving the result links with the description on sub page of my user page.
right.
We all
Yeah,
have different kinds of systems, but
indeed.
yeah.
I have I'm a big user of browser bookmarks, and I just have a VDQ as tag, and then I just try to write good descriptions for my bookmarks. I got 5,000 Wikidata queries saved there, I believe. Um, but here's another great comment, I believe, because Listeria can kind of be used the same way because we got the version history in MediaWiki, and this is great in case you do not want to be dependent on a service here.
Indeed,
And
and
I think
that might also be a good way for queries. There are a lot of ways that Listeria queries are good for monitoring. Actually,
indeed,
there's that might be an episode in itself.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
But this is one way to do it, and you get this very nice like website by default, which I think is amazing. Um, so
So is the flat GitHub com the service, is that sort of part of GitHub's services, or is that something external?
it's an official service from their innovation team, so to say.
All right.
So I imagine it is incredibly stable and such because
Mm-hmm.
they have been advertising as well
Yeah.
around it. So I think it will stay. And in case it won't stay, it's open source, and you can actually use it somewhere else. Oh, and here's a great comment from Jane again. Listeria has added a monthly flag, um, and that seems like something we should highlight.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it can actually be set up. Uh, you can specify the number of days, so you don't need to run it nightly. You can do, like, if you have something, you can up to monthly, but you can go like weekly as well in between.
okay.
So
So yeah,
that's actually quite good if you don't have, like, even if the data is moving, if you're not intending to look at it very often, it,
yeah,
it's no Like if it's running every night and it changes things, that takes resources. And if you only look at it on weekends, that might perhaps be 5 or 6 days of unnecessary changes. Yeah. All right. I think that's all for today. As last time, we don't have anything specifically planned for next week.
No.
So we'll
That's an
see.
opportunity, I see.
That's an opportunity.
To check something
Yes.
off the list.
Yeah. Indeed. And so until then, happy editing.
Happy editing.